So over the last couple of videos, we've talked about how God made everything. And when God made everything, it was good. We also talked about how the first people, Adam and Eve, didn't listen to God. They chose themselves over Him. And as a result, sin entered the world. Now we also talked about how this whole sin problem getting fixed and how people could get back to the garden were going to be important themes throughout the rest of the Bible. So with that in mind, let's hear the next part of the story of the Bible. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord I have brought forth a man." Later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were still in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain made love to his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and to Irad was the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael was the father of Methuselah, and Methuselah was the father of Lamech. Lamech married 2 women, one named Ada and the other Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, and he was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, "Ada and Zillah, listen to me. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. Adam made love to his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Seth also had a son, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. Wait a second. I thought we were going to see people getting back into the garden, or at least trying to. But right off the bat, we have murder. And not just murder, but brother killing brother. I mean, they're family, for crying out loud. It looks like things are getting worse, not better. So let's start from the top. Adam and Eve, they have a son named Cain. And when Eve has Cain, she says, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Now, normally we pass right past this, or we at most go, "Oh, that's kind of weird." But it's actually really important because it points us back to something that God said in the previous chapter. Now, when God is explaining to everyone how things are going to be different because of sin, God says to the snake that the snake's children and Eve's children are going to be enemies. And one of Eve's offspring is going to crush the serpent's head. So, when Eve has Cain, she thinks that Cain is going to be this one who's going to defeat the serpent or the serpent's children. Eve had so much hope that Cain was going to be the one to make things go back to the way that they had been before. And later, Adam and Eve have a son named Abel. Now, Cain is a farmer, Abel is a rancher, and they both decide to bring gifts to God. Well, God looks with favor on Abel's gift and not Cain's. Now, Genesis doesn't outright tell us why that is, and it's not going to be until much, much later in the New Testament that we find out that it was a matter of faith or trust in God. But Cain knows, and Cain is upset. Really upset. So God goes to talk with Cain, and God sets up what people's relationship with sin is going to look like for a really long time. God tells Cain that sin is crouching at his door and it desires to have him. But Cain has to master it. He has to rule over sin. Cain knows he's going to be tempted to sin, and God gives him another option. God gives him the option to rise above sin, to choose something different. Now, is Cain going to be different than his parents? Is Cain going to choose to listen to God? No. Cain goes the exact opposite direction. He murders his brother. It looks like Cain is an awful lot like his parents, choosing sin instead of trusting in God, letting sin rule over him. And if we jump forward to the end of the chapter, we see one of Cain's descendants, Lamech. And he's even worse. Lamech goes around boasting that he's got a shorter fuse than Cain, and he kills people. It sounds like often. If we go from Adam and Eve to Cain to Lamech, it seems like this whole sin problem is just spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. They're not the people that God promised to Eve, that were going to fix the sin problem, that were going to defeat the serpent. No, we're going to have to wait much, much longer to see who that is. And speaking of Lamech's part of the story, you might have heard like a whole list of names, and that might seem kind of weird to you. Well, it's called a genealogy. And if you've ever flipped through the Bible much, you'll have noticed that it's pretty common in the Bible. Now, we're not going to talk about it right now, but in a future episode, we're going to be talking about why genealogies are important and what we today do with them. But going back to Cain's part of the story, we notice that it rhymes with Adam and Eve's story. In both stories, God gives them some instructions. They choose not to listen. God comes and talks with them. They don't take responsibility for what they've done. They don't even say they're sorry. And then God responds. Now, they are absolutely 100% are not copies of the same story, but they're similarities. They rhyme. And we're going to see that throughout the Bible, that sometimes stories rhyme, and we should tune our ears to listen for that. And when we notice that there's some similarities or some rhymes between stories, we should compare them. We should look at them and see if those similarities show us anything important. And there's another thing. I don't really want to call God's response to Cain a punishment, because God's actually doing something different. So God places a mark on Cain, and when he does, he promises Cain something. Do you remember what that promise was? God promises that no one was going to come after Cain and kill him. Yes, Cain is going to wander, and Cain's work is going to be hard for him, but he's not going to die from somebody coming and killing him. God's promising that he's going to protect Cain. Again, even in God's punishments, he's merciful. So where does that leave us in the story? Well, we're still waiting for someone to come and fix the sin problem. And in the meantime, the sin problem seems to be getting worse and worse. But in that, God is still merciful. We'll have to see what happens next.